But we sat down and I talked to him. I was like, I think I want to do this within the company. I really love it and I'm gravitating towards it. And he asked me one of the hardest questions I've ever been asked. He's like, I totally understand that. I appreciate your passion for it. Do you want to do those things like for their inherent value because you're gravitating towards it? Or are you just kind of like done with what you're doing now? And I was like, whoa, I got to really, yeah. So my first role in the outdoor industry was customer service at Tracksmith.
Got it.
So I started full-time September 3rd, 2019 with them. And
while living in Boston.
Yeah, while living in Boston. Yep. So I stayed through after graduating in 2017. I, at that time, started firing off applications to get into the outdoor industry.
Yep.
To, Puma, Reebok, Saucony, all of these spaces in Boston, and got nothing back. Nothing, like we'll keep it on file or whatever, because I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to be there. And
there's no AI to write the resume.
Yeah, and there's also no AI to filter me out too. But with that, I was like, dang, I really need to like zero in and try to figure out what I can do to grow the skill set. So I took a job at Toast, the restaurant POS company, and I was a project manager there from the first job out of law school until I entered it at Tracksmith.
I think your entry is interesting because you were just like, I got to get in. I got to get in the ground floor. I know there's a lot of discussion. We're both fairly active in the Second Nature Slack. Anybody who's listening to this would love Second Nature. There's my royalty, Dylan and Aaron. $1, please. Anyone who's listening to this podcast would love that one. But there's a lot of discussion in that jobs thread about like, how do I get into the industry? How do I do this? And it's like, it's kind of similar to what you were saying about law. Like you kind of have to start at the bottom sometimes if you don't have the relevant experience, but you can work your way up. And so that's what you did at Tracksmith, right?
Yeah. The step that preceded that was while I was working at Toast, I was working nights and weekends at Tracksmith doing like part-time retail and community stuff. So I was going to the run clubs already. I knew they were always looking for people to kind of fill up some shifts. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. So I would leave one job, go to the other one, and found a lot of joy getting to know that space. And my thought at the time was, this company is small. The offices are 2 floors above the retail store. So there's a good chance that I'm going to be able to know who like the players are. And even at that time, I was like, who knows? Maybe could be an attorney for this brand.
Right.
I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do yet. But what evolved over time is after I ran Grandma's Marathon in the spring of 2019, I got a tip from my retail manager at the time, Jeff Silas, who we both know. And Jeff said there was a job opening that was coming up and they don't hire often. He's like, it might not be a job you're interested in on paper, but he's like, it's a great way to get into this company and it doesn't happen too often. And again, I'll say super privileged to say that I was 24 years old, or at that time I was older, right? Had a few more years since graduating. But to be that age at that time, being able to take that risk, like financially and all of those things, I mean, it was very much of the time that I could do that.
Yeah. I think risk taking, if you have the chance to take risks, you owe it to yourself to do it. I'm quitting my job in 2 weeks and I'm going all in on this.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's so sick.
By the time this episode airs, I will have quit.
That's so cool. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just like, again, like I had that conversation with a mentor of mine who's basically like, okay, let's say you make a mistake and 3 months later, like you're not going to be homeless. You'll be able to pay your bills. Like I assume you have some sort of savings. I assume that may have been a similar situation for you. And it's like in the grand scheme of things, what is 3 months of lost wages if you are in a position where you can do it with the upside of, well, what could happen if you bet on yourself, if you go on, if you take that job that's a foot in the door kind of a thing. Yeah. So yeah, I love it.
I'm really risk averse. I will say that. So it took a lot to make that decision. And one thing I had to do, I guess more practically, was think about like, all right, I'm going to take a pay cut to come here.
Yep.
And I don't know the rate of growth here as opposed to other companies. Right. So at that time I was like, all right, I want to do this. This is exactly what I want, but I should look into like, all right, time to get some roommates again.
Right.
So I like moved into a track shack. I moved in with like 3 other people, 2 of which, one of them was Jeff, my former retail manager at that point. Another one was friend Jared Ikevelli, who you know as well, who's from the Heartbreakers, but big in the running scene as well. And we moved into his place. And it was a way that I was like, I know I'm safe right now doing this.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will blossom the way I hope it does.
And it did.
It definitely did. Yeah.
Kind of like springboarded your career.
For sure.
So what happens next?
Yeah. So I was employee, I think 16 at Tracksmith. I'm pretty sure that's the case. But I started in that space. Within a few weeks of starting, I was, the customer service side of things. So learning all the systems of like taking phone calls and being on instant chat and doing the email responses for things, whether it was recommending products or people were even writing and asking for like workout advice sometimes because they were like, hey, I saw this one photo shoot that
what a
you
wild
did.
thing to do on a live chat.
Right. And some people are like, oh, what workout did they do in that thing? And I would be like, I want to know too. So I would ask our creative team, like, what did you put them through? And they would be like, oh, that was a 4-mile tempo. And then there's like this afterwards. So
Rollinsville.
Yeah,
it was Rollinsville.
Yeah. So I was doing that, but within the 2 weeks of starting, they were like, hey, we do this thing called pop-ups here. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And it was Chicago Marathon. They told us like, hey, we're going to go there. We're going to get a space that is not in the expo. And the whole point of this is for us to create our own environment for people to enter and shop and come to events and kind of be transported into a space that feels like our store just happened to open up in this city.
The Newbury Street before the Newbury Street.
Yeah. Well, at that point, like the store was open.
I just mean like the way that the Boston Marathon in particular, but this was not Boston.
Great point.
But yeah.
Yes. So going into that space, I was like, yeah, it sounds really cool. So that was the first thing I did. I was like, this is really amazing. And you're like, you mean you guys are going to pay for my flight to go somewhere? Like that was even foreign to me. And then they came back to me and they're like, do you want to do New York? I was like, yeah, I want to do New York. Cool. So like get an Airbnb in Chinatown and like walk to the Lower East Side of Rolling Blazers. We're going to do it all again.
Yeah.
And then coming off that, I was like, I think I really like this. Can I do it more often? And they said, sure. And mind you, this is turning the corner into 2020.
Yeah.
So the plans at the time were, cool, we're going to go to
Atlanta.
We're going to Atlanta. We're going to do a pop-up for the launch of the amateur sport program for the marathon trials. And then after that, we have 2 weeks in Tokyo booked and a month-long stint in London where you'll be staying and running a store. And obviously it all evaporated.
Yeah.
And it was
you got Atlanta, right?
Yes, got to Atlanta. But then when we got back, it was kind of like, hey, cancel all your stuff. Like, we'll figure this out. Obviously, everyone had to, go from there. But that was the acceleration into like the experiential side. I'm like, oh, I really like that part for sure.
Okay, so March 2020 happens.
Yeah.
That was my first experience with sponsorship of my podcast.
Yeah.
The reason that happened was a brand called Wigwam. They make socks.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, we were sponsoring races, but now there are no races. Like, can we talk to your audience? And so the first episode I launched with them was the episode I did with Shalane Flanagan. And it was like my second virtual podcast. And I vividly remember the feedback from the brand. Wigwam, Synchronit by Wigwam is the name of the company. I still wear the socks. They're fantastic. Talk about sustainability. When you have a product and you can wear it for 5+ years instead of it degrading within a year. I still have all my Tracksmith stuff too.
Amazing.
Anyway, and a 10-year-old Nathan vest.
There you go.
And anyway, the feedback was, and I was like, great episode. Audio quality was not very great. And so like I was just trying to figure out how to do these virtual episodes. But that was my first experience with sponsorship. And I was like, wow, somebody wants to pay me to talk about their product? I love these products. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
You were on the brand side at the time. How did you think about that pivot? And sort of, we talked about, everybody has a plan to get punched in the face. We got punched in the face repeatedly, over and over and over again that spring.
Yeah, there's a lot of really smart minds making those decisions. And I was just happy to be in like the orbit of them at the time. And there was a lot of, gut decision making and a lot of educated guessing for sure as it related to every aspect of the business, right? So, people doing operations and e-com had to adjust. People doing experiential, people doing content had to adjust as well. Even the way that we were running like Meter magazine, right, operationally changed in the way that Andy was doing that. So the shift that I saw on my side with like the customer experience side was, I don't know if they ever publicly said this, but Tracksmith didn't furlough their retail employees because it wasn't their choice. Like they kept them on the payroll and they're like, hey, if you want more hours, let's pour it into customer service because there's so much that's going on right now. We need to match the appetite that people are having once they were returning to safe activity outside. And I kind of took that as the opportunity to think like it would be great for us to make sure that although these folks know the brand super well, that they understand the processes and kind of the language and how we speak in a more formal context, especially when it's like in the written form as opposed to just like conversationally. So I started training all of our retail folks on customer service, and we developed that program to take on more people because before the shift, we were a customer service team of 2. It was Eric, Ash, and myself. And coming out of it, it was like, I think we can scale this if it's of interest, right? And then we built a team out from 2 to I think 6 by the time I shifted over fully to like marketing, to the marketing team at Tracksmith. So that was a big adjustment on that side, keeping up with everything the business was doing because everything's a reference point when we're living in the vacuum. So when we would put out content, people would want to talk about the content to the customer service team, and we had to make sure that they're up to date on it, let alone the product things. We had a press release with Mary Kane and Nick Willis joining. People want to talk about that. So it was a lot of finding these brand moments and figuring out the ways to disseminate it internally. That was, I think, a really good challenge and how to like build a toolkit through it.
And so when did the switch to marketing happen?
Yeah. So when I was still in the customer service space, I was managing the team at that point. Everybody we hired was not in Boston. We were still not in the office. We were still remote. So I asked my boss at the time if I could move away from Boston because that team was remote as well. And then I went back to law school in my head. And I was like, I have my plan A, my plan B, my plan C for my negotiation. And I went to plan A and I was like, I'd love to, move to Boulder with my fiance or girlfriend at the time, now fiance. And I can come back for like these reasons if it's needed. But, I was expecting to say no. And then we would go from there. And he was like, that's fine. So I moved out to Boulder in 2021 while still managing the team. Fast forwarding a little bit, there were some photo shoots that we did out here. And at the time I was feeling this like gravitational pull back towards the experiential side. I was still doing some stuff with it, going to pop-ups, and I'm like, that's the thing I want to get back to. And I had a conversation with the CEO who was out here for a photo shoot. So I asked Matt Taylor for like 10 or 15 minutes of his time. He
probably thought you were going to quit.
I hope that's not what he thought. Or maybe if he did, that would be like the best, like, oh, okay, we're fine. You know? But we sat down and I talked to him. I was like, I think I want to do this within the company. I really love it. And I'm gravitating towards it. And he asked me one of the hardest questions I've ever been asked. He's like, I totally understand that. I appreciate your passion for it. Do you want to do those things like for their inherent value because you're gravitating towards it? Or are you just kind of like done with what you're doing now? And I was like, whoa, I got to really, because I'm like, how do I respond in a way that like instills confidence on both sides, right? Of like, if you say no, that you can trust that I'm still going to do the job. But if you say yes, that you know that there's real reason.
How did you answer?
I think I said that my focus for the last 2 years or whatever at that time has been building a sustainable structure for the customer experience team that just didn't exist. Like we built an onboarding practice from scratch. We were finding ways to do these, making internal tools and all of these different systems and processes. And I was like, now that I've made them, I can say with confidence that these can be run by other people. And I'm confident in that. But the thing that I always enjoyed from day one was the connection with that ultimate person. The thing that I said to him was like, I've been in customer experience for the entirety of my time here. I feel like I know this customer really well and all the variations of who they can be.
Great point.
Right? Because I'm talking to them 6 hours a day actively.
When they're having problems.
Exactly. And sometimes there's some great write-ins and people want to celebrate their wins that we get to celebrate with them too. But I know how they speak and how they think and their variations to them. And then I get to see them in person and I get to have these points where people remember me from the email, quote unquote. And I want that. And he wildly just goes, hang out for a little bit. Trust me, I'll work on this. And that was a discussion in like January. And in February, he came to me and was like, okay, there's an opportunity for you to join Lee Glandorf's team.
Yep.
And she's the head of marketing at Tracksmith. That's the opportunity if you're ready. And I was like, done deal.